The first time I saw her, she was laughing. Not a nervous laugh, not polite, but the kind of laugh that fills a room, like she belonged there more than I ever did. And on her left hand, the ring caught the light. My ring. I remember freezing mid-step, the hallway at my husband's office suddenly stretching into something endless. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with air conditioning that never quite worked. She turned her hand, and that tiny diamond winked at me. The same chip at the side of the band, the same engraving inside. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. I told myself it couldn't be. That ring had lived on my finger for 12 years. Even after the fights, the cold dinners, the long silences, I never took it off. It wasn't just metal to me. It was the promise I made to myself, that no matter what, I would hold on to my dignity, my commitment, my family. And yet, there it was. On her, I left the office that day without saying a word. The ring felt heavier than ever on my own hand. Before all of this, my life was simple. Maybe too simple. I worked as a part-time librarian at the local community college. The days blurred together. The hum of old computers, the soft thud of books closing, the clock ticking toward lunch. At home, my husband, Darren, was the kind of man people called steady. He didn't drink much, didn't stay out late. He liked his routines: black coffee, the morning paper, a kiss on the cheek that landed somewhere near my ear before he rushed to work. We'd been married 12 years. 12 quiet, predictable, mostly comfortable years. There were moments, of course, when the silence between us felt too wide. But I convinced myself that comfort was just another word for love growing older. Our house sat on the edge of town, white siding, a maple tree out front that shed too many leaves every fall. I loved the way the sun hit the kitchen at 7 a.m., how the light touched the photographs on the wall. There was one photo I looked at every morning, our wedding day. I was 28, grinning so wide my cheeks hurt. Darren stood beside me, a little stiff in his tuxedo, but his eyes soft. He had slipped that ring onto my finger, whispering, "You'll never have to doubt me." I believed him. Maybe that's why I never asked where he really went when he said he was working late. Maybe that's why I ignored the smell of perfume that wasn't mine, faint but sharp, on his shirt collar some nights. Maybe that's why I smiled when his new colleague called during dinner and he excused himself to take the call in the garage. You tell yourself small lies when you're afraid to face a big truth. It started subtly, the kind of thing you'd brush off if you didn't already have a crack in your heart. Darren became lighter. That's the only way I can describe it. His moods lifted. He hummed while shaving. He texted more often, smiling down at his phone like it was telling him secrets. One night, he came home with a new shirt, a deep blue one I'd never seen before. I said it looked nice. He said, it was a gift. When I asked from who, he hesitated just long enough for my stomach to twist. Then he said, a client. Just appreciation stuff. I smiled, but my chest felt cold. The next week, he started leaving earlier for work. When I asked if something was wrong, he kissed my forehead and said, "Just more meetings, hun." You know how quarter end gets, but quarter end had never looked this good on him before. He started wearing cologne again, the same kind he wore when we first met. I noticed his phone never left his hand, and when I asked to borrow it one morning, he said it was dead and slid it into his pocket. There were moments I almost confronted him, but then I'd remember how his hand felt when he reached for mine in the dark, how he still made coffee for me every morning. Maybe I was just paranoid, I told myself. People change. Relationships evolve. Maybe I needed to evolve too, so I did what women are trained to do. I quieted my instincts. The day that changed everything came 2 months later. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I had baked banana bread that morning. Darren loved the smell of it. He'd texted earlier saying he'd be late again, something about a client dinner. That afternoon, my friend Carla dropped by the library. She was always blunt, the kind of friend who never sugarcoated anything. "I saw Darren earlier," she said casually as she browsed the shelves, "at that new restaurant by the river." "Oh?" I asked, trying to sound disinterested. "Yeah, He was with that pretty brunette from his office. You know, the one who drives the red car? I forced a smile. Probably just work stuff. Carla looked at me for a moment too long. Maybe. That night, Darren came home smelling faintly of jasmine. Not his cologne, not mine. I watched him eat the banana bread I'd baked. He said it was perfect as always, and I smiled back. The way wives do when they're trying not to break the illusion of a happy home. But inside, something had already cracked open. 2 weeks later, I dropped by his office to surprise him. I was carrying lunch, his favorite, chicken salad with extra pickles. The receptionist, a kind older woman named Linda, smiled. "He's in a meeting with Emily," she said. Emily, the name I'd heard too many times. "Oh, that's fine," I said. "I'll just wait." But as I sat in the lobby, I heard laughter echo down the hallway. A woman's laugh. It was carefree, intimate, and it pulled something sharp through my chest. When the elevator doors opened, Emily stepped out, holding a folder and a coffee. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with the kind of polished ease that comes from knowing men look at you, and then I saw it. On her hand, glinting under the light, the ring. My ring, or at least its twin. I don't remember how I made it home that day. I sat in my car for a long time, fingers trembling against the steering wheel. The ring on my own hand felt like a mockery, the symbol of a promise that no longer existed. That night, I didn't confront him. I watched him sleep instead. His face looked so peaceful, so ordinary. How could a man look that innocent and still carry so many lies? I turned my ring slowly, feeling its weight. I had promised myself I'd never take it off, that it meant something unbreakable. But as I looked at him, I realized something chilling. Maybe it wasn't me who had broken that promise. Maybe it was never mine to keep. The next morning, I woke up before him. It was a quiet, gray morning, the kind that makes you feel like time itself is holding its breath. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, and watched the mist roll off the maple tree. Darren was still asleep, his face half buried in the pillow. That image, the man I thought I knew, felt foreign now. Every small detail suddenly looked staged. His phone on the nightstand, his wedding band glinting under the morning light. His phone, that was where the truth lived, I could feel it. When he got into the shower, I made my move. I'd never done anything like that before. My hands shook as I picked up his phone. He'd changed his password months ago. I tried his birthday. My birthday, our anniversary, none worked. But when I typed her name, Emily, the screen unlocked. My breath caught in my throat. The first message was from the night before. Emily. Dinner was perfect. "You looked so handsome, my husband." My husband. It felt like my lungs collapsed. I scrolled up, eyes blurring through hundreds of messages. Photos of them at restaurants, at hotels, and then a picture of her hand holding a coffee cup. With my ring on her finger. The caption read, "Darren. Looks even better on you than it ever did on her." I don't remember dropping the phone, but I heard it hit the carpet. The shower kept running, the sound suddenly deafening. My whole body trembled, from anger, from heartbreak, from humiliation. When he came out, towel around his waist, I was standing there, phone in hand. "Who is she to you?" My voice didn't sound like mine. He froze. His face drained of color, then hardened into that defensive mask I'd seen before, the one he used when he knew he was cornered. "You went through my phone?" he said instead. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "That's your answer?" He looked at me, jaw clenched, eyes darting to the phone. "You're overreacting, Leah. It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I stepped closer. "You married her, Darren." "I read it. Husband, what does that mean?" He turned away, pulling on his shirt like the conversation was an inconvenience. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" My voice cracked. "You married another woman while you were still married to me. How's that complicated?" "It's criminal." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "It was just a civil thing. She needed the benefits. It wasn't about love." The world tilted. "You're telling me you married your colleague for insurance?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands, at the ring that was supposed to mean loyalty, devotion, partnership. And now it was just a lie I'd been wearing like jewelry. How long? I whispered. He didn't look at me. Almost a year. My chest burned. A year? While you still came home, kissed me, slept next to me, acted like nothing was wrong? He finally met my eyes, and for a moment I saw guilt flicker there. Small, fragile, almost human. I didn't plan it, Leah. It just happened. I laughed again, quieter this time. You don't accidentally get married, Darren. He sat down across from me, leaning forward. You don't understand. I was unhappy. You were always busy. You stopped caring. There it was. The knife turned inward. He wanted me to believe it was my fault. I stopped caring, I repeated slowly. Do you even hear yourself? You took vows, Darren. You promised me forever. He looked away. I'm sorry. But his voice was flat, rehearsed. Sorry wasn't what I needed. I needed the truth. The real ugly truth beneath all his excuses. Where did you get it? I asked after a long silence. What? The ring. The one she wears. He hesitated. His jaw tightened. And then he said it. You took it off once. When you were washing dishes, I kept it. Thought about returning it, but it just fit her better. I didn't even realize I'd stood up. The sound of my hand striking his face startled even me. He didn't hit back. He didn't yell. He just pressed his cheek and whispered, You done? Something inside me broke completely then. I wasn't crying, not yet. I was too hollow for that. I walked to the sink, turned on the water, and slid the ring off my finger. The metal felt cold, unfamiliar. I held it up under the light. You said this meant forever, I murmured. Guess you meant until paperwork got complicated. He didn't say a word. I dropped the ring into my pocket, not ready to throw it away, not ready to let go. That night, I packed a small suitcase. Just essentials, clothes, toothbrush, the old photo album I couldn't leave behind. I didn't even wait for him to come home from wherever he went. I left the house quietly, like a ghost slipping out of her own life. For a few weeks, I stayed with my friend Carla. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me a spare key and a blanket. Some nights I couldn't sleep at all. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, hearing his voice in my head. It's complicated. I filed for divorce the next morning after I confirmed through the courthouse that Darren had indeed registered another marriage. The woman, Emily Hart, married to him at the city registry 6 months before. Legally void, of course, since our marriage was still active. The clerk looked at me with quiet pity. You'll want to bring documentation. And maybe consider reporting the bigamy. Bigamy. The word stung like acid. I told her I'd think about it. For weeks, I functioned on autopilot. Lawyer meetings, paperwork, moving boxes. Darren tried calling. He sent texts that swung between apologies and accusations. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was a mistake. You never really loved me anyway. I didn't answer. Then one day, Carla came home from work holding a small envelope. This came for you, she said. It was from Emily. The handwriting was neat, careful, the kind of script that tries to look innocent. Inside was a note. I'm sorry you found out this way. I didn't know he was still married to you. He said you were separated. If it helps, I'll return the ring. It never felt right on me anyway. There it was, my ring, sealed inside a plastic bag. I sat on Carla's couch and stared at it for a long time. My reflection curved in the metal like a stranger's face. And for the first time, I cried, not just for the betrayal, but for the years I'd given away without realizing how small I'd become in that marriage. I promised myself something that night. I would never let someone else define my worth again. I didn't go public out of spite. I went public because silence had cost me enough. Darren had always been respected. That kind of good man reputation that clings to people who smile in photos and pay their taxes on time. He managed a small architectural firm downtown. People liked him. They trusted him, but I couldn't carry his secrets anymore. The first step came quietly. My lawyer advised me to file a statement, not just for divorce, but for fraudulent marriage. She said, "You don't have to destroy him, Leah. You just have to stand up for yourself." Still, when she handed me the documents, my fingers trembled. I wasn't sure what terrified me more, the legal fight ahead or the truth becoming public. When Darren was served the papers, he showed up at Carla's apartment the next evening. I opened the door just enough to see his face, pale, tense, his eyes desperate. "Leah, please. Don't do this." "You'll ruin me," I kept my voice calm. "You ruined yourself." He shook his head. "It was a mistake. I ended it with her. She means nothing to me." "Then why'd you marry her?" He didn't have an answer for that. I closed the door slowly. Through the crack, I heard him say softly, almost pleadingly, "Don't make me out to be the villain." But he was the villain, not because he cheated, but because he pretended to love me while planning a life with someone else. A week later, the fallout began. It started small. Whispers at the firm, an email leak, a rumor that spread faster than I expected. Someone had shared a copy of the court filing. His employees began piecing together what had happened. By Friday, it was all over town. "Did you hear about Darren? Married 2 women at once." My phone buzzed constantly. Old friends, curious neighbors, even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. I ignored most of them, but then something unexpected happened. Emily called. "I didn't mean for this to go that far," she said, her voice shaking. "They're asking questions at work." "I think I'm going to lose my job." I was quiet for a long time. Then I said softly, "I know what that feels like. Losing something because of him." She sniffled. "He told me he was divorced. He showed me fake documents, Leah. He said you'd moved away." Fake documents. I closed my eyes. "So he lied to both of us." "Yes," she whispered. "And now everyone's looking at me like I'm a homewrecker." I sighed. "You were a victim too. But you'll have to decide if you want to stay silent like I did, or stand up." There was a long pause. "What are you going to do?" "Tell the truth," I said. "All of it." When the investigation began, I was asked to give a statement. Sitting in that courthouse felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unravel. Darren had been summoned for questioning about the falsified marriage registration. He walked in wearing his best suit, the same one he'd worn to our anniversary dinner 3 years ago. His lawyer stood beside him, stoic and silent. He wouldn't look at me. The judge asked simple questions. "When did you sign the first marriage certificate? When did you sign the second? Did you disclose your existing marriage status?" Each time his voice grew smaller, quieter, less sure. When it was my turn, I didn't cry. I spoke clearly, calmly, like I was telling someone else's story. I explained the texts, the phone, the second ring, the lies. Every word felt like pulling a thorn out of my own skin. When it was over, I saw him glance up, a flicker of something like regret in his eyes. But regret without change is just decoration. The court ruled the second marriage invalid, of course. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that the truth existed outside of me now. I didn't have to carry it alone. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight. Emily was standing there waiting. She looked exhausted, pale, like someone who had aged a decade overnight. "I told them everything," she said. "I gave them the documents he made me sign." "I'm sorry, Leah, for everything," I nodded. "You didn't owe me that, but thank you." She hesitated. "He's blaming me. Says I ruined his life." I almost laughed. He ruined his own. "We just stopped helping him hide it." She managed a faint smile. "I hope you find peace." That night, I sat in my car outside my old house. Our house. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. It no longer felt like mine. I'd imagined this moment for months, walking up those steps, demanding closure, maybe even shouting one last truth into the silence. But when I finally saw it, I realized I didn't need to go inside. The house was just bricks. The marriage was just paperwork. The life I thought I had was just a memory. So I turned the key and drove away. Days turned into weeks. The gossip quieted. Darren lost his position at the firm. Ethical concerns, they called it. I didn't celebrate it. It just felt inevitable. One morning, while unpacking boxes in Carla's spare room, I found the envelope with my wedding ring. I hadn't looked at it since the day Emily mailed it back. I sat on the bed, holding it up to the light. It was still beautiful, a simple gold band, slightly scratched from years of wear. I slipped it onto my finger one last time. It didn't fit anymore. Maybe it never did. I walked outside, barefoot on the grass, the morning air cool against my skin. I stood by the edge of the small pond behind Carla's house. For a moment, I thought about throwing it in, letting it sink, letting it end there. But I didn't. Instead, I placed it gently in my palm, closed my fingers, and whispered, "You don't own me anymore." Then I tucked it into a small wooden box, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. A relic of a woman who stayed too long, who believed too much, who learned the hard way that promises mean nothing without truth. I used to think healing was something that happened suddenly, like a door you walk through, and on the other side, the pain just stops. But I learned it's quieter than that. It's the way you start waking up without checking your phone first. The way your body stops flinching when someone mentions his name. It's the way silence stops feeling like punishment. The first few months after the divorce were a blur of paperwork, boxes and late-night tears I thought no one would hear. I stayed with Carla for a while. She gave me space, but never distance. Every morning, she'd slide a cup of tea toward me before I even spoke. "Drink," she'd say softly. "You can cry after." That became our little ritual. Tea before tears. One morning, as the sun broke through the curtains, she looked at me and said, "You know, Leah, you could turn all this pain into purpose." I frowned. "Purpose?" You always had that gift. "You listen. You make people feel seen. Maybe it's time you help others who've been where you are." Her words sat with me for days. I wasn't sure if I had anything left to give. But then, a week later, I walked past the community center downtown. There was a small handwritten sign taped to the window. "Peer support training for women rebuilding after divorce or loss. Volunteers welcome." Something in me stirred. I went inside. The first session felt awkward. I sat in a circle with a dozen women, most of them older than me. Some had lost husbands. Others had escaped abuse. A few just sat in silence, their grief too big for words. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated. My hands trembled as I said, "My name is Leah." And I thought I was married to the love of my life. Turns out I was just married to a man who loved himself. A soft murmur of understanding moved through the room. One woman reached across the circle, her eyes glistening. "You're not alone, honey," she whispered. For the first time in a long time, I believed her. That group became my anchor. We laughed, cried, shared stories about lawyers, children, healing, and heartbreak. I found myself listening more than talking, just like Carla had said. By the end of that first month, the facilitator, a gentle woman named Rosa, asked me if I'd consider becoming a volunteer counselor. "Me?" I asked, surprised. She smiled. "You've walked through the fire, Leah. That makes you the safest person for someone still burning." Those words stayed with me. Training took time, but it felt natural. I started studying counseling basics, trauma recovery, emotional resilience, words that used to sound like theory but now felt like survival. I even went back to school part-time, working toward a certification in mental health support. My days began filling with purpose again. I woke up early, took walks, cooked simple meals, and wrote in a journal every night. Sometimes I'd flip back through old entries, pages filled with confusion, pain, and disbelief. I didn't erase them. I just kept writing until new pages spoke of hope instead. One afternoon, Rosa asked me to share my story with a new group. I hesitated, not because it hurt, but because I wanted to tell it right. So I started simply. "Once upon a time, I promised myself I'd never throw away my wedding ring. I said, smiling faintly. But one day I watched another woman wear it. A few women gasped quietly. Others nodded. I told them everything. Not the ugly details, but the truth of how betrayal dismantles your sense of self. How you learn to breathe again, inch by inch. How forgiveness isn't something you give to the person who hurt you, but a gift you give to yourself when you're tired of carrying their mistakes. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman, young, maybe 25, that whispered, "So, it does get better?" I smiled. Not all at once. But yes, it gets better the day you stop waiting for an apology and start giving yourself a beginning. Months passed. Seasons changed. I moved into a small apartment near the sea, a place with chipped white paint and a balcony that smelled like salt and jasmine. Every evening, I'd sit there with a cup of tea, watching the sun dip low over the horizon. Sometimes I'd think of Darren. Not with hate, just with distance. He had become a chapter in a book I no longer read. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to another city. Started over. Maybe he'd learned something. Maybe he hadn't. That part wasn't mine to carry anymore. Emily sent me a message once. A short one. I started therapy. Thank you for pushing me to face it. I hope you're doing well, I replied. I'm getting there. Because that's the truth about healing. It's never done. It's a journey of small, deliberate choices. Waking up, showing up, forgiving yourself for not seeing sooner. A year later, I stood in front of my first group of women as a certified peer counselor. The circle was full, faces etched with pain, fear, and a fragile kind of hope. I told them what I'd told myself 100 times. We are not what was done to us. We are what we choose to become after. As the session ended, one of the women, gray-haired with kind eyes, lingered behind. "Your story," she said softly. It gave me courage. I was about to go back to him, but now I think, maybe I can stand on my own. I touched her hand gently. You can. And one day, you'll tell your story too. When she left, I sat alone for a moment, the sunlight spilling through the blinds, warming my skin. For the first time in years, I felt whole, not perfect, not unscarred, but whole. That night, I opened the little wooden box on my dresser. Inside, the gold ring still lay where I'd left it, silent, gleaming faintly under the lamplight. I picked it up and smiled. I kept my promise, I whispered. I didn't throw you away, but I did let you go. Then I closed the box and turned off the light. The moonlight poured through the curtains, soft and forgiving. Somewhere in the quiet, I heard my own heartbeat. Steady, alive, free. Sometimes life teaches us its hardest lessons through the people we trust the most. When I saw that woman wearing my wedding ring, I thought my world had ended. But what I didn't know then was that endings aren't always a curse. Sometimes they're a quiet kind of mercy, the universe's way of pulling you out of something that was slowly destroying you. I used to measure love by what I was willing to lose for it. Now I measure it by how much peace it brings me. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you believed would never hurt you, please remember this. Their actions are not a reflection of your worth. You are not broken because someone failed to love you well. You are simply being invited to love yourself better. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without the pain winning. It means looking back and saying, that happened to me, but it doesn't define me. And if you're standing in that place right now, between heartbreak and hope, I want you to know, you will stand again. You will laugh again. One day you'll wake up, look at yourself in the mirror, and realize you've become the woman you needed when everything fell apart. That, my dear, is your redemption. So tell me, would you have done what I did? Would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed, hoping for change? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be the one that helps another woman find her strength. And if my story touched you, please don't forget to subscribe, so you'll be here when I share the next one. Until then, take care of your heart. You only get one.